I drive for Cerber. It's like Uber for the paranormal. Part 3. I know I left you guys hanging after finding my sister in the car. I'm very sorry to cause an emotional uproar for some of you, but I got emotional as soon as I typed Angela's name. I've been a busy man the last couple of days, and much to the chagrin of many of you readers, I've not seen Borg since he obliterated my back seat. I'll definitely let him know there's a Team Borg if I ever see him again. I'll be sure to ask him to use the bathroom before he climbs into the car. As for the charges on rides, entities are charged hourly on a sliding scale based on how dangerous they are. Fine print bullshit again. Borg ended up having to pay $2,598.03 for that short ride because, well, he's an ogre. Ogres eat people, so my life was more threatened with him than with Ray. That lump didn't even tip me. Now, back to my sister, Angela. Angela died at the age of 24. I was 28. My sister was a tiny, intelligent, nerdy, and independent woman who prided herself on her ability to quote every scripture in the Bible in a non-denominational way, while also being able to recite every Greek god, their spouse, children, and histories therein. She had a natural curiosity for stories, sincere compassion for the voiceless, and loved her family deeply. Angela never missed a single Christmas dinner. She was working on her doctorate in international mythology before she died. You all thought that a philosophy degree was useless? Angela and I were very close. The four of us as a unit had a very healthy relationship and could always rely on each other. We kept our circle small and tight. Her body was found dumped on the side of Highway 5, and it was in terrible condition. For those of you with weak bellies, I urge you to skip over this paragraph. Her body was severely sexually assaulted, with instruments that involved slicing holiday ham. Her head was almost entirely severed from her shoulders. Appendages were found in a black garbage bag, placed right next to her corpse. Stranger still, her cause of death was not due to any of these fatal blows. She was hot-shotted with heroin and was dead before this massacre could have taken place. The reason they know this is because when a body dies, blood coagulates and takes on a viscous texture, causing blood to pass through veins and arteries at a much slower rate. Pair coagulation with a stopped heart, no longer able to circulate and pump blood. You get a very minimal mess and little blood splatter. Perhaps the most ominous and puzzling part, she was found wearing a necklace that no one in my family recognized. A small silver bullet dangled from a delicate silver chain. It was like an anti-trophy, a clean breakaway from the typical psychopath. This person was a sadistic showman that meant to confuse and bring an unreasonably high shock value to anyone who stumbled upon the knowledge of this crime. It worked. The case grew cold and hasn't been reopened since. None of us got closure from her death. Just 2 years after we buried her, our parents committed suicide. They locked themselves in the garage, doused themselves in gasoline, and lit themselves in fire. They were found still holding hands with no sign of struggle. The death of my parents didn't affect me as bad as Angela's death did. You expect your parents to expire, but you don't expect your baby sister to be slaughtered. No one is ever ready for a call like that. My baby sister, the one who intentionally got a job at the bookstore to sneak books out simply to learn, was gone. Any hope and good that was left in me was buried along with her. I traded in the notions of starting my own family for the more tangible future in alcoholism. My baggage was exhausting enough for me. There's no reason to subject that sort of madness any further. The gnawing pain eventually went numb and formed invisible mental scar tissue to cover up any residual damage from impact. Yet here she was, staring at me with a vacant expression from the backseat of my car. I jumped into the back seat and hugged her tight, sobbing for several minutes, while she tried to hush me as though we were being watched. "James, please," she said, trying to quell the inconsolable teenager I was in that moment. "I need your help." I immediately shot back, grabbing her arms. "I thought I would never see you again, Angela. It's been 10 years, I said, gathering my composure. "I know." She looked down in her lap, trying to hide her own pain. "I'm sorry. I would have come sooner." I cut her off, resting my hands in my own lap, and said, "Wait, why now?" She looked back up at me and said, "I would have come sooner, but you were self-destructing. Seeing ghosts would only amplify that sort of behavior, so I watched from afar." "Okay." I nodded, looking past the milky desaturation of her eyes, and into her now very present soul. "I can understand that, but you are here now. What exactly do you need my help with?" Her face became very stern, replying with, "I messed up. You know how I was studying black masses, occultism, and ritualistic spiritualism?" I nodded and she continued, "Well, I was turning up empty-handed in every path I traveled, so I dug deeper." She became uncomfortable and shifted in her seat. "I decided to go through the dark web to find what I could on summoning entities. I eventually came into contact with a man who only referred to himself as Wade." She turned her face to the back of my seat and shut her eyes as if she had to scrape to the bottom of her cerebellum to recall the next few steps. "He claimed that he could summon Baphomet and that he would perform such summons for me. However, I already knew that Baphomet could not be summoned. So he was either going to make a huge fool of himself, or I was going to witness one of the most intelligent entities ever written about. Both results would have been fruitful for my research. I was so concerned with just wanting more experience, I never stopped to evaluate the risks." She let herself chew on that for a minute. She looked like she was truly checking out of the conversation, so I softly spoke. "Angela?" She shook her head, bringing herself back to the discussion. "I'm fine." She pushed her hair back, and that's when I saw the giant, dark bruise with a tiny hole in the center of it, like an eerie halo. I chose to ignore it, for now, because I was growing impatient and wanted her to wrap it up. "We met at a coffee shop, close to where I live, and he drove us 2 hours out of the way to what looked like a barely standing building, lights still flickering inside. We walked in and he instructed me to take my shoes and coat off. When I was done taking my second shoe off, I blacked out. I'm not sure how long I was out for, or what delivered me to being unconscious, but I woke up, clearly drugged." "It was heroin," I interrupted. "The cops told us you were a hotshot. That's how you died." "They had told us you were not an addict since you didn't have any other physical distress from active use." "Yeah." She rubbed her neck, staring forward. "Well, he didn't kill me right away. He put an IV directly into my neck and delivered it slowly enough to keep me tranquilized first." A clear expression of rage swept over her face, her voice still calm. "I woke up in what looked like a mortuary. I was on an old metal gurney, sustained by leather straps. That wasn't even necessary. I couldn't even lift my head, let alone escape. I knew I was going to die. I was just afraid it wasn't going to be quick. He told me that I was stupid for seeking dark answers to dark questions, and that my demise was entirely my fault. He wasn't wrong. I put myself in that exact position. I felt foolish. I should have known that summoning Baphomet wasn't possible, and that should have been enough to raise some red flags." I rolled my eyes at the last part. Nerd alert. "He told me that my death was important, regardless of how I had arrived to this situation." She continued, her voice taking on a monotonous inflection. "He said that he wasn't even part of any known religious sector, that he was a one-man worship, and that it was because he was a true god among men." Her mouth curled up into a slight smirk and she said, "I verbally retaliated though. My last words before he mainlined China White into my jugular were, 'I thought gods were perfect. You have mustard on your shirt, and you reek of dollar store aftershave. You're not a god. You just suffer from narcissistic personality disorder." She cackled at her own remark. I wanted to cry just watching her reflect any sort of positive feeling. I've missed her so much. "Well, that pissed him off enough to end it," she said, half smiling. I hope it brings you some sort of peace knowing that I didn't suffer." I nodded and replied, "It does. But what exactly do you need my help with?" "Well, I want you to find him, I guess." She shrugged. "I'm not his first and only victim. I'm not exactly sure what I want you to do once you find him, but I want him to stop this psychotic churn of self-agenda. Do you have any sort of lead you can give me?" I asked eagerly. Maybe she wasn't sure what to do after he was found, but I had a few ideas. I may even call Ray for help. "It's been 10 years, she said, looking directly into my eyes. "But I do remember where the location is. The funeral home that I died in." My hands start shaking, my breath trembling. Where was this exactly? It was then that I heard my Cerber notification chime. She finally added the destination to the ride that she had requested. I looked from my phone resting on the dash to her. She was smiling in such a warm, lovely smile for being so dead. "What do you say, James?" She lifted her finger, pointing at my phone. "Shall we begin?" My body fled with pinpricks of pure adrenaline. Hell yeah. I jumped to my front seat. I've been waiting 10 years for this. We started driving down I-5 South. We had a 3-hour journey ahead of us. The tip better be fat. This is Kinetic Symphony. If you've enjoyed this narrated story, please subscribe and like the video to help me grow. Thank you.